Bama versus Missouri this weekend in Como. Joe, this game smells to me. It smells to the highest heavens. I think we have a good old-fashioned strength versus weakness here for one of these teams, and it's a massive matchup for the SEC. How do you see it going down?
This game is so exciting because we have one team that's averaging 292 rush yards per game in Missouri. By the way, on FanDuel, Bama is favored at -3.5 for anyone who wants to bet that on FanDuel. 292 rush yards per game this season for Missouri. Ahmad Hardy is the only player this year to go over 700 rushing yards so far this year. They're also they're the only team that is in the top 5 in total offense and total defense in all of college football. But at the same time, the strengths that they have running the football, they're going up against an Alabama team who is completely different than they were in the first couple of games of the season. Alabama, after Vanderbilt ran for 113 in the first quarter, only gave up 22 rushing yards in the rest of that game. Which version of Alabama shows up? The other part about this, Missouri is only allowing 62 rush yards per game. Alabama finally catches their run game with Jam Miller, and they hit the ground running. And then lastly, Blake, before I throw it to you, the most important thing to me about why I lean Alabama at the current moment, it feels like there's been an ability for some of their opponents, like Lenore Sellers of South Carolina and like Jalen Daniels when they played against Kansas, were able to connect downfield on big passing plays. Right now, that is the biggest strength, and Alabama is the best team in the country at doing that. So we're going to see, Blake, two teams that are going to challenge one another at their various weaknesses with their current strengths. But the question that we have to decide here, and we're going to unpack, is which version of Alabama are we getting, and is Missouri going to be up for the challenge?
Strength versus weaknesses should be the title of this episode, but it won't be because I know you'll come up with something very clever.
Yes.
There are two things I want to bring up here. Just because Vanderbilt got away with the run or got away from the run last week does not change my thought of how leaky you've been in run defense. Joe, they're 87th in the country in run defense. I think some of Pavia's mistakes legitimately hurt Vandy in that second half. And my question is if Vandy on the road can bust off a long run and do some things and have success in the run game. By the way, their best back only had 4 carries. Missouri's not going to get away from Ahmad Hardy. They're not going to get away from Bo Prabula running the football. They're not going to get away from those stable of running backs and trying to lean on you all day. Will you be able to stop it early? Probably if you're Alabama. But they're not going to go away from it. It's their biggest strength that they have. And, Joe, you have the 87th team in the country in Alabama allowing rushing yards. Now, I know a lot of that comes against Florida State. A lot of that comes last week when Vandy had a massive run. But they're still allowing them. And another question I have about Alabama and why our good friends over at FanDuel have that at 3.5. What Bama team shows up on the road? See, last year the problem was, and even the beginning of this year the problem was, instead of when they go and play Georgia, this Alabama team has issues on the road with Kalen DeBoer. I don't think that is a microcosm of what they're going to be as a program under him. How do you answer that bell? And how do you answer that call? Now, let's flip that to the other side when we talk about strengths versus weaknesses. This Missouri secondary, don't you dare look at them stats because they are god-awful. You know how I know that somebody's scared about that Missouri secondary too? Because I've heard Eli Drinkwitz in his last 3 press conferences talk about how he's mad about what their secondary is doing. This ain't the team. This ain't the team. Not with what might be the Heisman frontrunner in Ty Simpson, who makes all of the right decisions. Joe, they let Lenore Sellers, who did not run until the third quarter, sit in the pocket and pick them apart. Now, listen, I think Lenore Sellers' game going sky high. The way that he's sitting in the pocket and throwing the football is unfair because of the way he can run it.
Yeah.
You let him sit in the pocket and throw the ball all over you. Brother, Ty Simpson ain't the dude. He's throwing the ball with conviction. He knows he is the most prepared quarterback. There is never a question for me, ever, if Ty Simpson is going to be the most prepared quarterback in college football, because he's going to be. So, with all of that being said, what do we come to a conclusion to? If Alabama's run defense is and will continue to be as leaky as it has been, then Missouri has a chance here. They can control the clock with Ahmad Hardy and the boys. Bo Perbula can have some scrambles and runs that keeps those chains moving. However, Joe, if Alabama is able to get off the field on third down and they're not able to sustain some of these drives, I said it last week, and this one went viral on our Facebook page. It's bombs over Baghdad, and here we go. Because I really don't know if there's a team right now that's going to slow down Ty Simpson the way that he's playing, and it sure as hell is not going to be this Missouri secondary who's got massive amounts of struggles.
So here's the funny thing that I'm thinking about here as you reissue that quote that you gave out on our Facebook page that got a lot of traction. This Missouri team is what a lot of people thought Vanderbilt was. There are a lot of similarities between these two teams, and Missouri's the actual threat.
What a hell of a day. Hell yes.
Missouri's the actual threat in the SEC, unlike Vanderbilt, because they've got a quarterback who is pinpoint accurate at the current moment in Perbula. They've got a running back that they're two running backs that they're just giving the rock to, and they're both running over everyone. And I love Ahmad Hardy's like a top 4 player in college football that on my list of guys that I freaking love. Can't stop watching his tape because he's just barreling through dudes. Nobody can tackle that kid. And then the other part about this, they're also kind of built like Vanderbilt, where their secondary's shaky and it's had issues and it's given up some big plays. There's two sides to this, Blake, that for what helps Alabama win and what helps Missouri win. What helps Alabama win is if Ty Simpson has another signature game, they attack downfield, Ryan Williams has a big play, and Jim Miller starts to get going a little bit. That is how Alabama wins. And I liked how you brought up the whole conversation that we had before the Georgia game of Kalen DeBoer can't win on the road. Beats Georgia on the road. Gets the Vanderbilt win. He is slowly moving past the issues that held back this team. And those issues that held back this team can't show up against this Missouri squad because this Missouri squad has fight. If they get going on the ground, I'd be really worried about Alabama in this matchup because, as you said, they have this ability. Missouri actually has the ability and the willingness to slow the game down if they need to by leaning on that trio of rushers that they have available to them. One thing I will say, though, and this is to give credit to Alabama, and one thing that really caught my attention when I was doing some reading on quotes from some of these coaches. Kane Womack, the Alabama defensive coordinator, said this after the game. I didn't think at the beginning of the Vanderbilt game, as I mentioned, when they gave up 113 rushing yards, I didn't think at the beginning of the Vanderbilt game as much as we stressed playing physical, playing fast, not playing on our heels. We still, that first drive of the game, I did not think we were playing very aggressive. I did not think we were playing very fast. I told our coaches in those situations, put the iPads down, take your headset off, and let's make sure we get our guys playing real fast and physical. That was a quote I read, and I was like, oh, shit. This is the first time I've seen a coach say, put down the damn technology and let's just make sure these kids go out there and play. And it felt like when I read that, and then I remembered back to the film that I watched on Sunday, it all made sense because after that first quarter, they were just dudes playing free, man. They were just dudes playing free. And I think that right now that is a part of the reason why I lean against Alabama because the 3 quarters of Alabama against Vanderbilt are a very different team, even though the stats showed throughout the entire season they've been struggling.
Well, and see, let me add, let's bring that in here. I'm with you there, but to the point you made earlier, and it's the biggest point that I have right here, Missouri is the Coca-Cola version of what Vanderbilt tried to do. They're the Coca-Cola version. They're not the Dr. Pibb version. Okay. Prabula is a better athlete by far.
And a better passer.
He's got a better arm. He's more accurate. Containing him is going to be a massive deal here. But see, the problem is when you think you got him contained, you don't really have him contained. And I like the way early in the season, Missouri, when they go down to Kansas and they get punched in the mouth, all they do is they don't panic. They rally right back. They don't get out of their game plan. They continue to do what they do, and they control things. The question is can they control it against Alabama? And I'm telling you, Joe, the reason that line is so small, and I say small, but it's 3.5, it's because there is some thought out there from people that Missouri's going to be able to control some of this clock and run the football. At the end of the day, though, when it's all said and done, there's two ways. The way both teams win is simply by Ty Simpson continues to do what they're doing, or he's doing. They still find some success. They're not great. I mean, Jam Miller ran for 136. Okay, but outside of that, Joe, they ran for 140. I mean, it's not really like they had massive amounts of success outside of Jam Miller, not that you necessarily need it. But I just think that they're going to continue to roll, and their weakness, Missouri's weakness, to me, feels bigger than what I think Alabama's is in run defense. But here's a question that I also throw out there. What has Eli Drinkwitz and the boys been able to cook up and conjure during a bye week?
Question.
What did they see against Alabama and Vandy that Alabama's not going to be able to see on film that they're going to be able to attack, and they don't have an answer for? And I think that that's what makes it so intriguing. I really think that I know we were talking about Oregon and Indiana earlier. I think this is the game that's actually going to be a little bit closer than maybe people, when they look at both of these programs, think that it is, just because of the way that Missouri can control the clock and how Prabula can scramble and make things happen with his legs. But when it's all said and done and you turn out the lights, I just think Ty Simpson in this past game is able to continue to expose that secondary, and it's going to lead him to a victory here.
I think that one of the pieces that you just brought up of like what could they potentially cook up, and I'm very specific. I very specifically want to acknowledge defensively, because there have not been a lot of teams over the past few weeks on this stretch where Ty Simpson has been unbelievable and where we have talked so highly of Ty Simpson. No one has successfully gotten after him because the Alabama offensive line has done such a tremendous job of protecting him.
Especially after Florida State.
Yes.
Especially after that.
So now you're coming into this game with one of the best pass rush duos in the SEC with Zion Young, Damon Wilson, and you've got a really solid interior defensive line with a rotation of players that have contributed at a very high level. Do those guys get home? Those guys have to get home to give a little bit of a cushion to the corners in the secondary that we talked about that's been struggling a little bit.
Let me pause.
Yeah, go ahead.
With that being said, would you try to heat him up and say, listen, our secondary is not going to be able to stop him anyway. Why don't we try to heat Ty Simpson up?
I think that would be the approach. Yeah, and I don't know what their typical blitz rate is, but I think that should be the approach. I don't think anyone's done a good job of flustering Ty Simpson, and he's been
outside of Florida State.
And he's been so freaking composed. And I think that the Florida State game is the evidence of, if you go after him, what can you produce? What kind of challenges can you produce? My last bit, though, that I have here for this game before I let you close things out, and you alluded to it, I'm impressed by how both teams have handled adversity. I'm impressed by how both teams, late in some games where it looked like they could have dropped, the South Carolina and the Kansas game for Missouri. And for Alabama, things got a little spicy late against Georgia, and things weren't looking good early against Vanderbilt. I trust both of these teams to finish the year really strong because I see two teams that battle through adversity incredibly well. And whoever battles through adversity the most in this close game ultimately is going to be the winner.
Just throwing this out there. If Missouri does get an upset, and I'm not even saying that it would be a massive upset because it would be because of brand name.
Yeah.
You do know that we're staring in week 8 down the barrel of an SEC gun of the SEC championship being some form or version of Texas A&M, Ole Miss, or Missouri.
That's insane if that does happen.
Well, hold on. Joe, that's where we'd be. So just
I just find it hard to believe that actually comes to fruition, though. Like there's going to be one recurring.
I do too. No team in the last 2 decades, well, besides Auburn and LSU, have won the SEC not named Georgia, Bama, and mainly it's been LSU being the 3rd team. And when you look at Florida, and I guess to some extent, I think they had one in there. I do wonder if, because it's against Georgia, you're coming off a bye week. I don't know. Can Kalen DeBoer kind of right this wrong about away games not named Georgia? That will be a question. Can they continue to find the run game will be another question for me too when we look at this game. All right.